The air in the boardroom was thick with cigar smoke and the weight of my father's words. "You'll never be a real man, Ethan." He'd spat, his voice a blade slicing through my 18-year-old heart. Now, a decade later, I stood in that same room, staring at the empire he'd built and the one I was about to take. I was 28, and the memory of that summer night still burned. My father, Richard Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Construction, had caught me kissing Jake, my high school best friend, behind the garage. His rage was a storm. He called me weak, a disgrace, unworthy of his name or his company. I left home that night, vowing to prove him wrong. New York City was my battleground. I'd clawed my way up from nothing waiting tables, sleeping on couches, studying engineering at night school. Every brick I laid, every blueprint I drafted, was a rebellion against his verdict. Now, Caldwell Construction teetered on the edge of bankruptcy, and I, Ethan Harper, having dropped my father's surname, was the unlikely savior poised to buy it out. The boardroom doors swung open, and my father walked in, older but no less imposing. His eyes locked on mine, and for a moment, I was that scared kid again. "You think you can take this from me?" he growled, his voice low but venomous. "I'm not taking anything," I said, steadying my voice. "You lost it. I'm just picking up the pieces." His face twisted, but I held my ground. This wasn't just about the company. It was about rewriting the story he tried to force on me, a story where I was less than, where love was a weakness. I'd built my own construction firm, Harper Builds, from the ground up. My team believed in me. My partner, Alex, believed in me. And somewhere along the way, I'd started believing in myself. The meeting was brutal. Investors grilled my father on years of mismanagement, shoddy projects, unpaid workers, and a reputation in tatters. I presented my plan: merge Harper Builds with Caldwell Construction, save the jobs of hundreds, and restore the company's legacy. The board was intrigued, but my father's glare never wavered. "You're no son of mine," he said as the room emptied, his words echoing the past. I leaned in, voice calm but firm. "I never needed to be. I'm enough as I am." That night, I met Alex at our favorite diner in Brooklyn. His warm brown eyes and easy smile were my anchor. "You okay?" he asked, sliding a milkshake toward me. "I will be," I said, my hand finding his across the table. "This is just the beginning." Alex had been with me through every step of this fight. We'd met 5 years ago at a community center fundraiser, where I was volunteering to rebuild homes for low-income families. He was a lawyer, sharp and passionate, fighting for queer youth kicked out by families like mine. His belief in me was unshakable, even when I doubted myself. As we walked home, the city buzzing around us, I felt the weight of tomorrow. The board's vote was in 2 days. If they approved my merger, I'd control Caldwell Construction. If not, my father would sell it to a soulless conglomerate, erasing decades of work. I couldn't let that happen, not for him, but for the workers, the families, the legacy I could rebuild. The next morning, I woke to a text from Jake, my old friend from high school. "Heard you're taking on your dad. Proud of you." My heart clenched. Jake had been my first love, fleeting and fragile, before my father's wrath tore us apart. I hadn't seen him in years, But his words reminded me of the boy I'd been, scared but defiant, dreaming of a life where I could be myself. I spent the day at Harper Build's office, reviewing plans with my team. My second in command, Maria, a no-nonsense engineer, slapped a stack of contracts on my desk. "We've got this. Ethan, your dad's got nothing on you." Her confidence was infectious. But doubt gnawed at me. Could I really pull this off? That evening, Alex and I attended a gala for the community center. It was a chance to network, to sway a few investors before the vote. I wore a navy suit, tailored to perfection, but my nerves were frayed. Alex squeezed my hand. "You're Ethan Harper. You've got this." Then I saw him, Jake, across the room, older but unmistakable. His sandy hair fell into his eyes, and he smiled when he saw me. My heart stuttered. "Ethan," he said, crossing the crowd. "It's been too long." We talked, the years melting away. He was a teacher now, working with at-risk kids. His warmth, his kindness, hadn't changed. But as we laughed, I felt Alex's presence beside me, steady and sure. My past and present collided, and I realized how far I'd come. The gala was a success. 2 investors promised their support, swayed by my vision and track record. But as we left, Jake pulled me aside. "Your dad's planning something," he warned. "I overheard him at a bar last night. He's not going down without a fight." My stomach dropped. Of course he wasn't. Richard Caldwell never lost gracefully. The next day, I dug into my father's moves. He'd been meeting with a rival firm, Vanguard Enterprises, known for hostile takeovers. If he convinced the board to sell to them, my merger was dead. I called Maria, and we worked late, combing through financials, looking for leverage. We found it, a trail of unpaid vendors, hidden by my father's CFO. It was enough to sway the board if I played it right. The morning of the vote, I stood outside the boardroom, heart pounding. Alex was there, his hand on my shoulder. "You're not that kid anymore," he said. "You're the man who built an empire from nothing." I nodded, steeling myself. This was it. The fight for my future. For the company. For the legacy my father thought I didn't deserve. As I stepped inside, my father's eyes met mine, cold and unyielding, ready to lose. "Boy," he said. I smiled. "I've already won." The boardroom was a battlefield, and I was armed with truth. My father sat at the head of the table, his presence commanding despite the cracks in his empire. I stood at the opposite end, blueprints and financials spread before me, my team flanking me like soldiers. Maria's sharp gaze met mine. A silent "We've got this." The board members, a mix of old guard tycoons and younger investors, watched us like hawks. I launched into my pitch, voice steady despite the pulse hammering in my ears. Caldwell Construction is more than a company, it's a legacy of building communities, homes, dreams. My merger with Harper Builds will save it, restore its reputation, and secure its future. I laid out the numbers, Harper Builds' growth, our completed projects, our loyal workforce. I contrasted it with Caldwell's decline, missed deadlines, lawsuits, unpaid vendors. The evidence was damning, and I saw unease ripple through the room. My father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Then it was his turn. He stood, his voice booming with the authority of a man who'd ruled for decades. Ethan's a dreamer, not a leader. He's chasing ideals, not profits. Vanguard Enterprises offers stability, scale, and a clean break from our troubles. The room murmured. Vanguard's offer was tempting, a quick fix for a sinking ship. But I knew their game: strip the company, fire the workers, sell the scraps. I couldn't let that happen. Stability, I countered, stepping forward. Vanguard's track record is clear. They gut companies like yours for profit. My plan preserves jobs, honors contracts, and rebuilds trust. Look at the numbers. I slid a folder across the table, detailing Vanguard's history of layoffs and failures. A board member, MS Carter, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, leaned forward. You've got evidence, Ethan. But what about the unpaid vendors? Can you address those? This was my moment. I revealed the hidden financials, Maria, and I had uncovered proof of my father's mismanagement, buried by his loyal CFO. Gasps echoed. My father's face reddened, but he stayed silent, his control slipping. The vote was close. Hours of debate, questions, and counter-arguments left me drained but resolute. When the final tally came, it was 7-5 in my favor. Harper Builds would merge with Caldwell Construction. I'd done it. But victory felt hollow as my father stormed out, not sparing me a glance. I wanted to feel triumph, but all I felt was the weight of his rejection, heavier now than ever. That night, Alex and I celebrated quietly at home. He cooked pasta, his specialty, and we sat on our tiny balcony overlooking Brooklyn. You changed the game today, he said, clinking his wine glass against mine. I just wanted to prove I could, I admitted, staring at the city lights. But it doesn't erase what he said. Alex's hand found mine. He's wrong about you. Always has been. The next week was chaos. Integrating two companies was a logistical nightmare, merging teams, aligning contracts, reassuring clients. Maria was a godsend, handling the details with precision. But rumors swirled. My father was meeting with Vanguard again, whispering to investors, trying to undermine the merger. I confronted him at his office, a glass-walled tower he'd built in Manhattan. He sat behind his desk, looking smaller than I remembered. Why can't you let this go? I asked. You lost. This company is my blood, he said, voice low. You're stealing it. It's not yours anymore, I said. You let it rot. I'm saving it. He stood, leaning forward, his eyes blazing. You think you're a man because you wear a suit and hold hands with that lawyer. You're nothing. The words stung, but I didn't flinch. I'm more than you'll ever understand. I walked out, heart pounding but head high. His hate couldn't define me anymore, but his sabotage was a real threat. I needed allies. I reached out to Jake, who'd been quietly supporting me from afar. He agreed to meet, and we grabbed coffee in a small cafe near his school. You're doing something incredible, Jake said, his eyes warm. I always knew you were unstoppable. His words stirred old feelings, but I pushed them aside. Jake was my past. Alex was my future. Still, his insight was invaluable. He knew my father's tactics, having grown up around him. He'll try to turn the workers against you, Jake warned. He's already spreading lies about layoffs. I acted fast. I called a town hall for Caldwell's employees, standing before hundreds in a warehouse. I'm not here to tear this company apart, I said, voice echoing. I'm here to save your jobs, your livelihoods. My father let you down. I won't. The room was skeptical at first, but as I shared my vision, fair wages, new projects, a focus on community, they listened. A few clapped, then more. By the end, I had their trust, or at least the start of it. But my father wasn't done. A week later, a major client pulled out, citing instability. I smelled his handiwork. Maria confirmed it. He'd been bad-mouthing the merger to anyone who'd listen. I needed to neutralize him. But how? Alex had an idea. Sue him, he said over dinner. Defamation. Breach of fiduciary duty. Hit him where it hurts. I hesitated. Suing my father felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But Alex was right. If I didn't fight back, he'd destroy everything I'd built. The legal battle began. Alex assembled a team, and we filed a lawsuit, alleging my father's actions were sabotaging the merger. The press ate it up, son versus father in corporate showdown. I hated the headlines, but they kept the pressure on him. Meanwhile, I threw myself into the company. We landed a contract to build a community center in the Bronx, a project close to my heart. I visited the site, hard hat on, watching workers lay the foundation. This was why I fought, not for revenge, but for moments like this, building something that mattered. Jake stopped by the site one day, bringing coffee for the crew. You're doing good, Ethan, he said. This is bigger than your dad. I nodded, but the weight of the fight lingered. The lawsuit was gaining traction, but my father was a master manipulator. I couldn't shake the feeling that he had one last card to play. The lawsuit was a firestorm. Headlines screamed across New York, Caldwell family feud threatens construction giant. Every morning, I woke to new articles dissecting my life, my relationship with Alex, my fight for the company. I hated the spotlight, but Alex kept me grounded. This is just noise, he said, kissing my forehead. Focus on what's real. What was real was the work. The community center project in the Bronx was moving fast, and I spent long days on site, working alongside the crew. Their respect grew as they saw me get my hands dirty, hauling rebar and checking blueprints. But my father's shadow loomed. Workers whispered about his latest move, a smear campaign claiming I was unfit to lead. Too emotional. Too soft. I laughed bitterly when Maria showed me the email he'd sent to the board. He's calling me soft, I said, after he tanked his own company. Maria smirked. He's desperate. That's a good sign. But desperation made him dangerous. A week later, Vanguard Enterprises filed a counteroffer to buy Caldwell Construction outright, bypassing my merger. They'd sweeten the deal with promises of quick payouts for the board. My father was behind it, I knew it. I called an emergency meeting with my team. Maria, Alex, and a few trusted advisors gathered in my cramped office. We need to discredit Vanguard, I said. Their track record is a house of cards, failed projects, unpaid workers. We expose that. We kill their offer. Alex nodded. I'll dig into their legal history. If they've got skeletons, I'll find them. Maria leaned forward. And I'll talk to the unions. If we get them on our side, Vanguard's toast. The plan worked. Alex uncovered a string of lawsuits against Vanguard shoddy construction, wage theft, even safety violations. Maria rallied the unions, who threatened a walkout if Vanguard took over. By the time we presented our case to the board, their offer was radioactive. My merger stood firm. But my father didn't stop. He leaked a story to a tabloid, dragging up my past-me teenage years. My relationship with Jake. My rebellion against him. The article painted me as a spoiled kid out for revenge. It hurt. Not because it was true, but because it twisted my truth into something ugly. Alex found me pacing our apartment, fists clenched. Don't let him get in your head, he said, pulling me into a hug. You're not that kid anymore. I know, I said, but the doubt lingered. Was I fighting for the company? Or was I still trying to prove something to him? The next day, I got a call from Jake. I saw the article, he said, his voice soft. I'm sorry, Ethan. Want me to talk to the press? Set the record straight. I hesitated. Jake's support meant the world, but I didn't want him dragged into this mess. Thanks, but I've got this, I said. Just keep being you. He laughed. Always. The community center project became my refuge. Every beam we raised, every wall we built, was a reminder of why I was doing this. One afternoon, a worker named Carlos, a burly guy with a quick smile, pulled me aside. My kid goes to that center, he said. You're making a difference. Man, don't let the old man mess with you. His words hit hard. This wasn't just about might, was about people like Carlos. His kid. The community. I doubled down. Working late nights. Meeting with clients. Reassuring investors. But my father's next move blindsided me. He filed a countersuit, claiming I'd manipulated the board and defrauded the company. It was a desperate play, but it tied us up in legal battles, draining resources. Alex was furious, poring over documents to counter every claim. He's got nothing, he said. This is all bluster. But bluster could still hurt. The legal fees piled up, and some investors got skittish. I started losing sleep, haunted by the fear that I'd fail not just myself, but everyone who'd trusted me. One night, I found Alex asleep at his desk, surrounded by legal pads. I draped a blanket over him, my heart swelling with gratitude. He was fighting as hard as I was, maybe harder. I didn't deserve him, but I was damn glad he was mine. The next morning, I got a tip from an old friend at Caldwell Construction. My father was meeting with a shady developer, someone known for bribing officials. If I could prove it, it'd be the final nail in his coffin. I called Maria, and we got to work, digging through emails, tracing payments. It was risky if we were wrong. It could backfire. But if we were right, it was game over for him. We found the evidence late one night, a paper trail linking my father to illegal kickbacks. It was enough to take to the authorities. But I hesitated. Destroying him like this felt final. Too final. What's stopping you? Alex asked, reading my face. He's still my dad, I said quietly. I hate him. But I don't know if I can do this. Alex took my hand. You're not him. You're better. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. I sat with that choice for days, torn between justice and mercy. In the end, I handed the evidence to Alex's legal team, but I asked them to hold off. I wanted one last chance to confront him, to see if there was anything left of the father I'd once loved. I arranged a meeting at his office. Just us. No lawyers. No board. As I walked in, I saw something new in his eyes: fear. The office was eerily quiet. The Manhattan skyline a cold backdrop through the floor-to-ceiling windows. My father sat behind his desk, his hands folded, but I could see the tension in his knuckles. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of him. I was ready. I know about the kickbacks, I said, tossing a folder onto his desk. You've been bribing developers to undermine the merger. It's over, Dad. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't deny it. You think you're clever, don't you? Digging up dirt like some street rat. I learned from you. I shot back. You taught me to fight dirty. Difference is, I fight for something real. He leaned back, a bitter smile twisting his lips. Real? You call that life of yours real? Parading around with that man, pretending you're something you're not. I clenched my fists, but I didn't take the bait. I'm not pretending. I'm Ethan Harper, and I've built more in 5 years than you did in 30. This company, it's mine now. And I'm not here to destroy you. I am here to give you a chance to walk away. He laughed, a harsh, hollow sound. You think I'll just hand it over? You're nothing without my name. I don't need your name, I said. I never did. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with years of unspoken pain. I wanted him to say anything that showed he saw me, not as a disappointment, but as his son. But his eyes were cold, unreachable. Get out, he said finally. You'll never be a man in my eyes. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. I'm sorry you can't see me, but I see myself clearly now. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent to the war inside me. I called Alex, my voice shaking as I told him what happened. You did the right thing, he said. You gave him a chance. That's more than he deserved. The next day, I handed the kickback evidence to the authorities. It was a gut punch, but it was necessary. The news broke within hours. Caldwell Construction CEO under investigation. The board, already leaning my way, finalized the merger. My father was out, and I was officially in charge. The transition was grueling. I spent weeks restructuring teams, meeting with clients, and reassuring workers. Maria was a rock, handling logistics while I navigated the chaos. But the weight of my father's downfall clung to me. I'd won, but at what cost? One evening, Alex dragged me to the community center in the Bronx. The foundation was complete, and kids were already using the half-finished space for after-school programs. A girl, maybe 10, ran up to me, holding a drawing of a building. Is this what you do? She asked, eyes wide. Yeah, I said, crouching to her level. We build places like this so kids like you have somewhere safe. She grinned, and for the first time in weeks, I felt light. This was why I fought not to prove my father wrong, but to make a difference. Jake called that night, his voice warm with pride. "You're killing it, Ethan. I knew you would." "Thanks," I said, smiling. "Hey, you should come by the site sometime. The kids would love you." He laughed. "Deal. But only if you promise me coffee." The next challenge came fast. A major client, spooked by the scandal, threatened to pull out of a hospital project. I flew to Chicago to meet them, pitching our vision with everything I had. They signed, but it was a reminder the fight was never over. Back in New York, Alex and I started planning our future. We talked about moving out of our tiny apartment, maybe getting a dog. Normal things, human things, that felt like a gift after years of survival mode. But my father's shadow lingered. He'd disappeared after the investigation, leaving no trace. Part of me hoped he'd find peace. Part of me knew he wouldn't. One night, Maria called with news. A whistleblower from Vanguard came forward, confirming my father's role in their takeover attempt. It was the final piece of leverage we needed to secure the company's future. I should have felt triumphant, but I just felt tired. Alex sensed it. Over dinner, he reached across the table, his hand warm on mine. "You've carried this long enough," he said. "Let it go." "I'm trying," I said, my voice breaking. "But it's hard when the man who raised you thinks you're nothing." "You're everything," Alex said fiercely. "To me. To those workers. To those kids. You're enough." His words were a lifeline. I leaned into him, letting the weight of the past slip. Just a little. The company was stabilizing. The community center was thriving. And I was building a life I was proud of. But deep down, I knew the story wasn't over. My father was out there, and men like him didn't vanish quietly. The community center's grand opening was a burst of light in a stormy year. The Bronx hummed with energy kids laughing, music blaring, local leaders shaking my hand. I stood on a makeshift stage, cutting the ribbon, while Alex beamed from the crowd. "This is yours, Ethan," he'd said that morning. "You built this." But as I smiled for the cameras, a shadow lingered. My father's investigation had gone quiet, but I felt his presence, like a storm waiting to break. Maria noticed my distraction. "Focus on today," she said, nudging me. "You earned this." The center was a masterpiece, modern, warm, a safe haven for kids who reminded me of my younger self. I walked through the halls, watching teens play basketball, younger kids painting murals. A boy named Jamal, Carlos's son, tugged at my sleeve. "You gonna build more places like this?" he asked. "Count on it," I said, ruffling his hair. His grin stayed with me all day. But triumph was short-lived. That evening, a lawyer called. My father had filed a new lawsuit, claiming I'd stolen proprietary designs from Caldwell Construction. It was a lie, but a clever one, hard to disprove without dragging the company through more mud. Alex was livid, pacing our apartment as he strategized. "He's grasping at straws," he said. "We'll bury this." I wasn't so sure. My father knew how to twist the truth, and the press was still hungry for drama. The next day, a headline screamed, "Harper accused of theft in family feud." Clients started calling, nervous. I spent hours reassuring them. But doubt crept in. Was I strong enough to keep this up? Maria and I worked overtime, combing through old designs to prove they were mine. We found evidence seeding stamps, emails, sketches that showed I'd created them for Harper Builds, not Caldwell. But the legal battle drained us. Resources were tight, and morale was slipping. One night, I broke down. Alex found me on the balcony, staring at the city. I can't keep fighting him, I said, voice raw. Every time I think I'm free, he pulls me back. Alex wrapped his arms around me. You're not fighting him alone. We're a team. Remember? His strength steadied me. But the war wasn't over. The next morning, Jake called with a lead. I know a guy who worked for your dad, he said. He says Richard's been meeting with a shady PR firm, planting stories to tank your reputation. I met Jake's contact, a nervous former assistant named Tom, in a diner. He spilled everything. My father had hired a firm to spread lies, hoping to force me out. Tom handed me a USB drive with emails, recordings, proof. It was a gold mine, but using it meant escalating the fight to a new level. I took the evidence to Alex. This could end him, I said, but it'll drag us all through hell. Then we go through hell, Alex said. You've come too far to let him win. We leaked the evidence to a reputable journalist, who ran a story exposing my father's tactics. The backlash was swift. Clients rallied behind me, and the lawsuit over the designs collapsed. But my father didn't stop. He released a public statement, calling me a traitor who'd turned his back on family. The words cut deep. I remembered the summers we'd spent together, him teaching me to swing a hammer, telling me I'd take over one day. How had it come to this? I threw myself into work, focusing on a new project, a housing complex for low-income families. It was personal, a way to give back to the city that had given me a second chance. But the stress was relentless. I started snapping at Maria, ignoring Alex's calls. I was unraveling. One evening, Jake showed up at my office, unannounced. You look like hell, he said, dropping into a chair. Talk to me. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I'm trying to hold it together, but it's too much. He's everywhere. Jake leaned forward, his eyes steady. You're not fighting for him anymore. You're fighting for you. For Alex. For those kids at the center. Don't forget that. His words pulled me back from the edge. I invited him to the housing project's groundbreaking, needing his warmth to balance the chaos. Alex joined us, and for a moment, surrounded by my past and present, I felt whole. But my father's next move was a gut punch. He contacted the board, claiming he had new investors ready to challenge my leadership. It was a bluff, but it spooked them. I had to act fast to secure their trust. Maria suggested a bold move. Invite the board to the housing project site. Show them what I was building. Let them see your heart, she said. The visit was a success. The board saw the families who'd lived there, the workers who believed in me. They reaffirmed their support. But I knew my father wasn't done. He was a man who'd rather burn everything down than lose. The housing project was my lifeline, a reminder of what I was fighting for. Every morning, I walked the site, watching steel beams rise against the Brooklyn sky. Workers clapped me on the back, calling me boss with a respect I'd earned. But my father's latest threat hung over me like a storm cloud. His new investors were a fiction, but his charm was real. He'd swayed 2 board members, planting doubts about my leadership. I called an emergency meeting, laying out the numbers, Harper builds profits, Caldwell's recovery, the lives we were changing. This isn't about me, I said. It's about the people we serve. Ms. Carter, the board's swing vote, nodded thoughtfully. You've got vision, Ethan. But your father's relentless. What's your plan if he keeps coming? I'll keep building, I said. He can't stop progress. The board stayed with me, but the pressure was crushing. Alex noticed the toll. One night, he dragged me to a quiet jazz bar, forcing me to unplug. You're carrying the world, he said, his hand warm on mine. Let me carry some of it. I leaned into him, grateful but exhausted. I just want this to be over. It will be, he said. You're stronger than he is. The next blow came fast. A whistleblower from Caldwell's old guard leaked documents suggesting I'd misreported profits to secure the merger. It was another lie, but it triggered an audit. The press pounced, and clients started pulling back. I spent days with accountants, proving every dollar was clean, but the damage was done. Maria was furious. Your dad's playing scorched earth, she said. We need to hit back hard. She was right, but I was tired of fighting fire with fire. I wanted to end this on my terms. I reached out to an old family friend, Pastor James, who'd known my father for decades. He was a long shot, but I hoped he could talk sense into him. We met at a church in Queens, the same one I'd attended as a kid. Pastor James listened as I poured out the stormy father's rejection, the lawsuits, the sabotage. He's lost himself, James said. But there's still good in him. Let me try. I doubted it would work, but I was desperate. Meanwhile, Alex and Maria rallied the team, preparing for the audit's fallout. We doubled down on transparency, inviting clients to tour our projects, showing them the truth. It worked. Most stayed, and a few even increased their contracts, impressed by our grit. Pastor James called a week later. I spoke to Richard. He said, he's angry, but he's listening. Meet him, Ethan. One last time. I agreed, though my heart was heavy. We met at a park, neutral ground. My father looked worn, his eyes sunken. You've ruined me, he said, voice low. You ruined yourself, I replied. I just wanted to build something better. He stared at me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man who'd taught me to dream big. Why couldn't you just be what I wanted? He asked. Because I had to be me, I said. He didn't respond, but something shifted. He walked away without another word, and I knew it was the last time we'd speak. The audit cleared us, and the company stabilized. The housing project neared completion, and the community center was thriving. I started to breathe again, to believe in a future without my father's shadow. One evening, Alex and I hosted a barbecue for the team. Maria brought her famous empanadas, and Jake showed up with a guitar, playing for the kids. Laughter filled the air, and I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. But late that night, a news alert hit my phone. Richard Caldwell found dead in apparent suicide. My heart stopped. I read the article. Numb. He'd been found in his apartment. A letter beside him. No details yet. Alex held me as I shook. Grief and guilt crashing over me. This isn't your fault, he said. But I wasn't sure. Had I pushed him too far? The next days were a blur. I learned the letter wasn't addressed to Mike, was to the board. Admitting his failures. Clearing my name. It was the closest he'd ever come to an apology. I buried him quietly. Just me, Pastor James, and a few old friends. I didn't cry. I didn't know how to feel. But as I stood by his grave, I made a promise. I'd build a legacy that honored the good in him, not the hate. The weeks after my father's death were a fog. I threw myself into work, avoiding the grief that clawed at me. The company was thriving, new contracts, happy clients, a reputation reborn. But every success felt hollow. I'd won, but I'd lost something I couldn't name. Alex was my rock. He'd sit with me in silence when words failed, or pull me into a dance in our living room to shake off the darkness. You're allowed to feel this, he said one night, his voice soft. He was your dad, flaws and all. I nodded, but the guilt lingered. Had I been too hard? Could I have saved him? Maria kept the company running, her efficiency a lifeline. She pushed me to focus on the housing project's ribbon cutting, set for next month. This is your legacy, Ethan, she said. Not his. She was right. The project was a beacon of affordable homes for families who'd never had a chance. I walked the site daily, watching kids play in the new park we'd built. Jamal, Carlos's son, became my shadow, asking endless questions about construction. You gonna be my boss one day? He teased. I laughed. Maybe you'll be mine. But the press wouldn't let my father's story die. Articles speculated about his death, some blaming me, others painting him as a tragic figure. I ignored them, but they fed my doubts. Jake called, sensing my spiral. Come to the school, he said. The kids need you. I spent a day at his school, talking to teens about engineering, about chasing dreams despite the odds. Their stories, broken homes, rejection, resilience mirrored mine. I left feeling lighter, like I'd found a piece of myself. The housing project's opening was a triumph. Hundreds gathered, families, workers, local leaders. I stood on a stage, Alex and Maria beside me, and spoke from the heart. This isn't just about buildings, I said. It's about homes, hope, second chances. The crowd cheered, and for the first time, I felt the weight of my father's words lift. I wasn't a real man by his measure, but I was real enough for the people who mattered. After the ceremony, a woman approached me. She was in her 60s, with kind eyes and a familiar jawline. I'm your aunt, Clara, she said. Richard's sister. I owe you an apology. I was stunned. I hadn't seen her since I was a kid. She told me she'd cut contact after my father disowned me, too afraid to stand up to him. I read about what you've done, she said, tears in her eyes. You're more a Caldwell than he ever was. Her words hit hard. I hugged her, forgiving her silence, forgiving myself. That night, Alex and I sat on our balcony, the city glittering below. I'm proud of you, he said, his hand in mine. You've built something incredible. We built it, I corrected, kissing him. The company grew stronger. We landed a contract for a new school, and I poured my heart into it, thinking of Jake's kids. But a new challenge loomed, a rival firm. Not Vanguard, but a smaller player. Started undercutting our bids. Maria suspected they had inside information. Someone's leaking, she said. We launched an internal investigation. And the truth was a gut punch, one of my father's old allies, still loyal to his memory, had been feeding info to the rival. I fired him. But the betrayal stung. It was a reminder that my father's legacy wasn't just building, it was a network of loyalty I'd have to dismantle. I leaned on Alex and Maria. And slowly, we rebuilt trust. The school project moved forward. And the community center expanded, offering job training for queer youth. I hired Jake to lead it. His passion a perfect fit. One evening, Clara invited me to her home. She showed me old photos of my father as a young man, smiling, before bitterness consumed him. He loved you once, she said. He just didn't know how to show it. I took the photos. A piece of him I could hold without pain. I started to let go. Not of him, but of the need for his approval. I was enough. The rival firm's attack slowed, and we outbid them on a major project. The company was mine, not just in name, but in spirit. I was building a legacy of inclusion, of hope, of love. The school project's groundbreaking was a sunny spring day, the kind that made New York feel alive. Kids from Jake's program ran around, their laughter mixing with the hum of construction. I stood with Alex, watching the first shovel hit the dirt. This was a legacy I'd fought for, built from the ashes of my father's empire. Maria handed me a hard hat, grinning. You did this, Ethan. You made it real. I shook my head. We did this. The past year had tested me in ways I hadn't imagined. My father's death, the lawsuits, the betrayals they'd carved me into someone stronger, but softer too. I'd learned to forgive. Not just him, but myself. I wasn't perfect, but I was enough. The company was thriving. We'd expanded to 3 new cities, hiring diverse teams, prioritizing projects that gave back. The community center was a model for others, and Jake's job training program was changing lives. I saw my younger self in every kid we helped scared, defiant, dreaming of a place to belong. Alex and I were planning our wedding. Nothing big. Just a small ceremony in the park where we'd had our first date. Maria was my best woman. Jake my officiant. Clara would be there. A bridge to a family I was rebuilding. One day, I got a letter. It was from a worker at Caldwell Construction. Someone who'd been there in my father's final days. He was proud of you. It read. He never said it, but I saw it in his eyes when he talked about your projects. I didn't know if it was true, but I chose to believe it. Not for him, but for me. I framed the letter, hanging it in my office beside a photo of me and Alex at the community center. It was a reminder I'd built this life, not to prove him wrong, but to prove myself right. The rival firm's interference faded. We'd exposed their tactics, and clients trusted us again. But I stayed vigilant, knowing the industry was brutal. I leaned on my team Maria's grit, Alex's heart, Jake's wisdom. They were my family, chosen and fierce. One evening, I visited the housing project, now a vibrant community. Jamal ran up, holding a model of a skyscraper he'd built. "Look, Ethan, I'm gonna be like you." I knelt beside him, grinning. "Better than me, kid." As I walked home, Alex's hand in mine, I felt the city pulse around me. New York had been my battleground, my refuge, my home. I'd come here broken, a kid told he'd never be enough. Now, I was a man who'd built an empire, not of steel and concrete, but of love, resilience, and hope. My father's voice was gone, replaced by my own. I was Ethan Harper, and I was a real man not because of what I owned, but because of who I was.